Hi, everyone. I'm super excited to have this beautiful woman, Leah Piper, who is my teacher and my dear friend. And she will be one of the guest teachers for the Irresistible Woman course that begins on November 14th. And we will be talking today about self-pleasure ritual, the power of our sexuality as the healing force within our bodies, and how through giving full yes to your sensuality, it actually connects you deeper to your femininity. Thank you so much, Leah, for joining me and for being part of this journey. And you have an incredible story yourself, and I wanted you to share a little bit about your journey and how claiming and owning your sexuality and removing barriers and maybe conditioning around your body, your relationship with your yoni, your relationship with pleasure, created and opened up this portal of you being a version of irresistible woman.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd be happy to. So I grew up in a really kind of confusing religious environment. So the first 10 years we were born again Christian, Pentecostal family. The newspapers, the local newspapers described our church as a cult. That was pretty cool and intense and strange. And then when my parents left that church, we got baptized into Catholicism, and I ended up going to Catholic school. My mom was raised Catholic, and it was a way for her to kind of get back in her father's good graces. He offered to pay for a better education. So lo and behold, now I went and got indoctrinated into the whole Catholic Christianity. Needless to say, what both of those experiences taught me, other than kind of supporting a young experience of spirituality, like that was, I did take parts of that away with me, but especially the sexual stuff, it was shrouded in guilt, shame, and fear, especially being a girl. You know, it was like my brother and I had two different sets of rules. And mine was to be suppressed. It was like female sexuality was not okay and had to be protected at all costs.
I think in general in a society, in many countries, it's not only the United States, in many countries, we as women, we're kind of like, we need to be quiet, or we need to hide our sexuality, or God forbid I have a desire.
Yeah, especially when you think about, I mean, thankfully we're becoming more sex positive here in the US, but when you think about what we're still doing with mothers, how we virginize mothers, you know, it's sort of like to emulate the Virgin Mary, you know, in some ways. It's like, don't let the kids know you're sexual. You know, it's like this really, really weird thing that we do as a culture. And I think we need to start normalizing women's sexuality. We've normalized male sexuality, but we have not fully normalized female sexuality in our culture as something that is our birthright. So needless to say, I was actually very sensual, even as a little kid. And I also had the misfortune or fortune, depending on how I was thinking of this experience as I went through my healing experience of sexual trauma. So I had many years of sexual abuse growing up as a kid, and that deeply affected how I experienced sexual shame. And what really surprised me as I started, you know, I had this from a very young age, I had this feeling that there was something more to sex. And my body responded to sexuality in a way that my heart was really at war with. So it was like this part of my body was really alive, and this part of my body was super confused. And as I just finally started to claim that there was a place where sex and God could come together, like I started to rebel and go, I'm not believing this shit anymore. You know, because I'm having these experiences sexually now that I feel like I'm age appropriate to have these experiences that are really big. Mm-hmm. And so I started to ask the questions like, there's got to be something more to sex. And where do we have a healthy model for love and sex and God and sex? Yeah. So that started me on a path where I discovered Tantra yoga. And it was through that I had to come face to face. Like I remember my first weekend seminar, and I was there because I wanted to know more about sex and God. I had no idea that I was going to encounter the huge path to sexual healing and wholeness that my spirit so desperately longed for. Up until that point, I kept that story of abuse really shut down and closed off. It was like, it was so scary to me. Like I didn't want anyone to know the secret. I really felt isolated, alone in it.
It's like denying that part.
Well, it was like I wanted to deny it to everyone out there.
Mm-hmm.
I could never deny it to myself, because I even used to pray, like, please let me forget. Please let me forget. Make this go away. And I never was one of those people that had a lot of repressed memories, because I remembered everything. And it was more like I thought if the secret got out, then people would know that I wasn't lovable. Then people would know that I was really broken, and it would ruin my chances for happiness. So it was this thing that kind of protected. But lo and behold, as I started to sort of free up and began the process of becoming integrated, and also like starting to change the narrative about being a victim and being abused. I use some of that language now only because it's relatable for some people. We don't have a lot of different language to replace it, but I no longer feel connected to being a victim. I look at that experience growing up, all the craziness of some of that, and I know that it has meaning and purpose for my life now. And I hope that anyone who has experienced sexual trauma has a chance to transform their story, so that it becomes something that makes them powerful, and not something that makes them feel powerless.
Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing and talking about it in such a vulnerable and, in the same time, very powerful way. And somebody once said, and it's kind of, I remember that we able to be vulnerable only when we're owning our vulnerability. So you are embodiment of really owning and embracing that experience, right? And then alchemizing it into your gift, into your magic. Because you're one of my favorite, and I think, my personal opinion, one of the most brilliant teachers. And I remember when I met you and Charles in Thailand, that was my first
is that right?
introduction to Tantra. And I saw you on stage, you know, just talking about like sexuality and Tantra and pleasure and Yoni and sacred spot and all of those things. It's like you gave me permission to finally say, I love sex, and I'm sexual and sensual, and I have a desire. So I just want to highlight it that, you know, those experiences, I think hating the victimhood, it's what we do for survival, right? It's like, you can't just hate yourself, or you can't kill yourself. So you have to feel like it happened to me and it damaged me. But then it's so important to find the way out. And I think this is where many women, regardless of what kind of abuse, they're getting stuck into the identity of, it wounded me, it damaged me, it done something to me, and there is nothing I can change. And I want you to share a little bit of, how did you find the courage, and what happened? How did you make a decision? I'm going to own it. I'm going to transform it. I'm going to alchemize it. It's not going to be me, right? Like, it's not going to be just Leah who had that experience. There's so much more to Leah.
So thank you for that. And you're right. The healing process has stages. I couldn't leap from feeling broken to feeling whole, to feeling a victim, to feeling totally like a hero. You know, there's a big bridge. There's a lot of work from here to there. And for me, it was being in groups where there was a level of consciousness and trust and safety to step into that vulnerability. In fact, if you wanted to go deeper in this thing that you were so curious about and you wanted to be good at, you couldn't continue to proceed without showing up more and more. And that meant showing up for yourself. And you're watching these other brave people do it, and you're realizing that we all have the same fear. You know, the word vulnerable translates to woundable. So it's no wonder it's so hard to do, because when we're being vulnerable, we're actually going, I'm really vulnerable right now. I'm going to let you see me. And you probably think it's ugly. And I think it's ugly too. And please don't run away. You know, I hope you like what you see, all these minutes, you know. Let me just do like just a quick little pause, because I got a puppy that's dying to come in and join us. And we wouldn't want to leave out puppies. Okay, boo boo, come on up. That's a good boy.
Hi, Dottie. Oh my God. Well, you know what I noticed when, because it's not the first time when I talk to somebody about like sexual energy and just right, like that vibration of that energetic frequency that animals that comes in, because they drop it, they love it.
Yeah, they do. They really do. So when I realized, like when I watched that, not only was my admiration for someone else being vulnerable grew, like I really even fell in love with those individuals more and more. When you bond over that kind of rawness and humanity in that shared pain that generates empathy. And when I realized, when I did those scary things and I started to release these secrets, and on the other side, I was loved even more for it. I could be even more myself. Then like being vulnerable became something that became like a superpower, instead of this, oh my God, I'm going to be rejected if I show this part of myself. When really, when we avoid vulnerability, the only rejection that happens is us rejecting ourselves. And most of the time, people will just love you more. Now there is also a kind of a shadow place where if we're always in this hypersensitivity and we're falling apart all the time, that can be very draining for people around them. But my experience was really beautiful, and I felt like the real me got to emerge, and I became like shinier and more connected, and I started to feel a sense of like purpose and knowing how to go forward in my life, especially in my career. As this was changing me, I wanted to help it change others, knowing that I was not unusual, that there are so many women that have a version of my story that is their story. Yeah, that's it's kind of taking a step into the unknown and being willing to be courageous. I think the other point I want to make is about shame, because sexual shame is so huge, for so many different cultural reasons. Mine was really religious cultural shame is where it started for me. And the thing about shame is shame thrives on secrecy.
Yeah.
It like gets bigger and it breeds and it gets darker. It wants to be kept a secret so that you can keep feeling bad for yourself. So a part of the journey was also exposing the shame monster and noticing that shame would leave my body the more honest I was and the more brave I was by talking about shame with others. Also, part of this whole process was actual practices having to do with sexual healing principles. So there was a way where my body was being touched and accessed and acknowledged, and my wounds were being validated that wasn't my fault, it wasn't okay. You know, that little girl that was so confused got a chance to have a voice and got comforted, and there was soothing happening to my nervous system. All of these happening to the parts of my body that were molested as a child. So, and it's not like we had to like look through every experience of my abuse. It was more just like tapping into the wholeness of the impact of having a negative experience happen to your body and bringing love to soothe that impact that got stored in my body, and to just love it up and wash it away. And so it's a really, really powerful thing that I think most people should endeavor to learn, is these tools and these practices that you can know how to not only heal yourself sexually, emotionally, physically, spiritually, but that you can support another body's ability to do the same thing, and therefore gaining lots of resilient skills along the way.
And you touched it briefly, that it was also commitment that you made for yourself. through the practices that you learn, right? You could take them or leave them. And I know many people, especially right now, there's so many classes, so many techniques, but it's not about the technique or practice. It's about whether you're implementing it or not. And I know, I love how you talk about that you turn your healing journey into your ritual. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think that, and I also want the viewers who are watching this to know that you don't have to have like a big trauma story
Mhm.
for you to gain lots of benefit from various healing or awakening rituals. The rituals that are healing in nature, if it turns out you don't got a lot of heal, A, double high five, B, great, you are on your way to awakening. And by awakening, you're now actually helping the wiring get stronger in your body. The circuitry that runs from the brain to the rest of the body having to do with pleasure gets stronger and expanded, therefore helping you to run more clean current safely so that your body can experience more love and more pleasure in big, big, and bigger amounts. And so, sort of, not that there's a real end game, but what the whole point in all of this is to learn how to expand your nervous system in such a way that you can contain more sensation, more pleasure, more bliss, and most importantly, the profundity of what sexual pleasure really has in store for the human being, which is counterintuitive. Our biological wiring, it requires a consciousness of waking up and going, I think I could probably get more. But you got to train your body in order to receive that bigger up leveling of experience. So that's why one should study the sexual arts. Just to kind of give a why to why we even bother with all of this, especially if you didn't come into this karma with a ton of pain to work out. Now, in terms of the types of rituals that I have found to be the most effective in my body, there are many. And one of the ones that I'm really excited to talk about in the work that you're creating, Maya, has to do with understanding how a woman can come more fully into her turn on. And when I say woman, I'm talking about the female genitalia and its erectile tissue map. So if you identify as a woman, I think you're going to really relate to this, whether you were genetically born as a woman. But anatomy wise, both men and women, our genitals are more similar than anyone imagined. It is so freaking cool. And female genitals have just as much erectile tissue inch for inch and ounce for ounce as male genitals. And so this is like pretty new information. We did not have this 20 years ago. We did not have this in my sex ed classes in high school. They didn't know it because a lot of money goes towards male reproductive health and very little money has gone towards women reproductive health. However, that has started to change. So what I want to show the people who I hope will sign up for this course, The Irresistible Woman, is that I want to give you that map. Because this map completely, and I was already 13, 14 years into being a sexuality expert in the field of Tantra yoga. So when I got this information, and I've been at it now for 19 years, it blew my mind to have another piece of understanding of how our bodies work. And so I want to give you this experience of understanding the blood flow and these yummy new areas that maybe you never thought to wake up and touch and be in communion with, and how our arousal builds and how much time it takes and how our vulva changes. You know, we don't get to see a lot of vulvas. Even if women get undressed in front of each other, we still don't know the shape of each other's vulva. We might see pubic hair, but you don't go down and go, well, gee, your vulva looks different than mine. It's like, it's so confusing. And so, yet we're so different, and yet we still have these same little areas get fluffy and plump and turn darker colors. And when you can visually, when the first time when your mind gets blown that you change so much down here, what that does is, as you can observe that when you're in a sexual experience where you can't see it because bow chicka bow bow, you're busy, you're doing other things, but something's going on down there. When you already know what it looks like at each stage of it getting engorged, that has created a mind-body connection. And that understanding changes all of your sexual experiences going forward, because you understand, ooh, I'm at that place. Ooh, 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 that's what's happening. Oh, I know just what I look like. And you like what you look like. And there's something so empowering. And the neural connection changes forever. It becomes stronger. And many of us are it's like our wires are crossed going up to the brain. So lastly, the big impact I want to make in this moment is that your brain is the biggest sex organ. It's your brain that tells the rest of you, baby, something hot is going on. Can you feel it? So we've got to get our brain and these yummy bits talking to each other. And if the wires are crossed, it's no wonder why so many of us feel numb and have a hard time reaching climax and feel disconnected to our body. So this is just one of many things that I believe as sexually healthy people, we want to get out there and learn, because this is stuff your mom never knew and your dad didn't know. So come to Maya, come to me, and finally get this stuff.
100%. And I also wanted to highlight what you shared. I know some women say that, oh, I'm too much in my head. Like I'm too preoccupied sometimes how I look like, or how does it feel, or whether he feels it. And I think one of the best ways, right, the way to drop from thinking about sex while you're in the process, right, or pleasure, is actually have more knowledge about what is happening with, right, like with our bodies, with our yoni, and keep that in mind. And also, I think this knowledge particularly will help you understand that it's in your body to open up like a flower to your pleasure and to your orgasmic sensations. It has nothing to do with any thought process. So in that case, hopefully it will help to not be in the head and just trusting your body and your feminine ability to, right, like turn into this ocean of pleasure, an ocean of possibilities that is within you. Yeah, that's exciting, Leah.
Yeah, I think what you say is really important, because there's different parts of the brain are managing different experiences in the body. So for instance, there's one side of our brain that is really the manager of the list. It's problem solving. It's looking for obstacles. It's looking for problems. It's looking how to solve things. It's very analytical. It worries. And so that's usually the side of the brain that gets people mood in sex. It's like they have a hard time settling in and letting go. When I talk about engaging the brain and the rest of the body, I'm helping people, especially by settling into meditation and different breathing styles that helps people move to the side of the brain that allows for emotions to arise, that it takes your concentration, allows you to feel sensation. So you're following the sensation and the feelings that are happening in your body. That's what you're tracking. You're using your mind powerfully to track where can I let go even more? What can I open up into? Where can I put a breath? How can I move and feel my feminine? How can I arch? How can I make this experience more mine? How can I not make it their job to pleasure me, but allow me to go, oh, this is so my jam. I know what I'm doing because I bothered to learn. And that's the change. I mean, that's the part of the brain that we want to awaken, because orgasm is an emotional experience. And it's a mystical experience. Love is an emotional experience and it's a mystical experience. And those things happen in the side of the brain that meditates. And so part of these practices comes with quieting that busy thinking, worrying part of the mind and opening up to a feeling, mystical, emotional part of the mind.
Yes. Oh my God. I'm like feeling tingling all over my body.
Yes.
Yeah, so just want to briefly explain to our viewers that during your session, it will be demo, and it will be an explanation of the female arousal. And it's an invitation for you ladies also to have a mirror and take a look at your Yoniverse.
Yes, the universe. It's precisely. So
I
what
just want to say that you can be on or off camera. It's totally up to you. But this class, to me, it's like also initiation into that irresistible woman within ourselves as well, because we need to know that part of ourselves.
Yeah, my hope is that through this practicum that we'll be engaging, and we'll probably have everyone's cameras off just so that everyone feels more comfortable. But to have a mirror so that you can see, here's my unaroused vulva. Here's my vulva after being touched for 5 minutes. Here's the vulva after being touched for 10 minutes, 15, 20, 30, so on and so forth, so that you can physically see how the power of touch and how touch will change the sensitivity of anatomy and wear, and to just marvel and to learn how to look at yourself with reverence and to see beauty, and also get the support that we all need along the journey when we don't see the beauty and we aren't comfortable and we're scared or we're repulsed or we think we're gross. You know, I've had all those feelings of going, oh, this is like an alien down there. And to just be like, to normalize all of that, and so that you can move towards the opportunity of going, I'm a miracle. Like, this is the most amazing tissue. There's no tissue like this on the body. You know, like, I want us to all share a moment of awe together, and a feeling of gratitude that we get to have pleasure, like, because it's a gift. It's a gift in our world and in our life. So
it is a gift, 100%. I think this is what makes us alive, right? No wonder they say that sex connects you deeper to your divinity, because you're getting out of that fixing, judgmental part of your brain / ego, and you're giving yourself full permission to be open, to give and receive, and then hit this high frequencies of what's your body and your spiritual being capable of experience in the physical form. And I also wanted to point out that I had that for a very long time. I was thinking that all the yonis are kind of weird and ugly. And when I saw mine, I actually was surprised for the first time. I'm like, okay, well, it's not actually that bad. And then I learned that 𝐸𝐫𝐫𝐞𝐬𝐢𝐬𝐭 approach were different types of yoni.
Oh yeah,
and I learned which one is mine, and then I literally I fall in love with it. And the more I want to say that it's shocked me, the more I'm like visually know how my yoni looks like, and I'm like have like this very tender connection to her. The more my sex right now, I would say, even like a Ferrari, like I can open up like almost instantly, and it was not before. Like, this connection is so true, and it's very, very healing. Yep. I'm super excited for you, Leah, to be part of this and be the guide on such a tender, vulnerable path. And you are, as I already said, embodiment for me for a irresistible woman, but also embodiment for an amazing teacher and woman. So I'm honored and excited to partner up and co-create magic together.
Me too, sister. Love, love, love. See you soon.